Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Top of the morning. Official test start time 2 minutes, 5 pages, 5 paragraphs, 5 sentences each, 5 words each sentence, 5 computer spaces in between, 5 revisions. You can use your hyperscientific, you can use any artificial intelligence or technology, but you must share the work and show the work to the class. If you do not share the work, show the work. How you got the answers. With the class, I'm going to assume what you did was use technology, you will get zero credit for it. So, top of the morning, baby. Let's rock and roll. Let's rock and roll, baby.
Right?
All right, let's see what we got. See what we got right here, dog. Let's go to technology. I did a class with Ray Dalio recently. Mm, so don't show us.
1050, 251.
Recognize your two barriers. The two biggest barriers to good decision making are your ego and your blind spots. Together, they make it very difficult for you to objectively see what's true about you and your circumstances and to make the best possible decisions by getting the most out of others. If you can understand how the machine that is the human brain works, you can understand why these barriers exist and how to adjust your behavior to make yourself happier, more effective, and better at interacting with others. A. Understand your ego barrier. When I refer to your ego barrier, I'm referring to the subliminal defense mechanisms that make it hard for you to accept your mistakes and weaknesses. Your deepest seated needs and fears, such as your need to be loved and the fear of losing love, the need to survive and the fear of not surviving, the need to be important and the fear of not mattering, reside in primitive parts of your brain, such as the amygdala, which are structures in your temporal lobe that process emotions. Because these areas of your brain are not accessible to your conscious awareness, it is virtually impossible for you to understand what they want and how they control you. They oversimplify things and react instinctively. They crave praise and respond to criticism as an attack, even when the higher level parts of the brain understand that constructive criticism is good for you. They make you defensive, especially when it comes to the subject of how good you are. At the same time, higher level consciousness resides in your neocortex, more specifically in the part called the prefrontal cortex. This is the most distinctively human feature of your brain. Relative to the rest of the brain, it's larger in humans than in most other species. This is where you experience the conscious awareness of decision making, the so-called executive function, as well as the application of logic and reasoning. B. Your two yous fight to control you. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, though your higher level you is not aware of your lower level you. This conflict is universal. If you pay attention, you can actually see when the different parts of a person's brain are arguing with each other. For example, when someone gets angry with himself, his prefrontal cortex is sparring with his amygdala. In other words, his upper level self is battling with his lower level self. When someone asks, "Why did I let myself eat all that cake?" the answer is, because the lower level you won out over the thoughtful higher level you. Once you understand how your logical conscious you and your emotional subconscious you fight with each other, you can imagine what it's like when your two yous deal with other people and their two thems. It's a mess. Those lower level selves are like attack dogs. They want to fight even when their higher level selves want to figure things out. This is very confusing because you and the people you are dealing with typically don't even know these lower level beasts exist. Never mind that they're trying to hijack everyone's behavior. Let's look at what tends to happen when someone disagrees with you and asks you to explain your thinking. Because you're programmed to view such challenges as attacks, you get angry, even though it would be more logical for you to be interested in the other person's perspective, especially if they are intelligent. When you try to explain your behavior, sometimes your explanations don't make any sense. That's because your lower level you is trying to speak through your upper level you. Your deep-seated hidden motivations are in control, so it's impossible for you to logically explain what you're doing. Even the most intelligent people generally behave this way, and it's tragic. To be effective, you must not let your need to be right be more important than your need to find out what's true. If you're too proud of what you know or how good you are at something, you will learn less, make inferior decisions, and fall short of your potential. C. Understand your blind spot barrier. In addition to your ego barrier, you and everyone else also have blind spots, areas where your way of thinking prevents you from seeing things accurately. Just as we all have different ranges for hearing pitch and seeing colors, we have different ranges for seeing and understanding things. We each see things in our own way. For example, some people naturally see big pictures and miss small details, while others naturally see details and miss big pictures. Some are linear thinkers, while others are more lateral, and so on. Naturally, people can't appreciate what they can't see. A person who can't identify patterns and synthesize doesn't know what it's like to see patterns and synthesize any more than a colorblind person knows what it's like to see color. These differences in how our brains work are much less apparent than differences in how our bodies work. Colorblind people eventually find out that they're colorblind, whereas most people never see or understand the ways in which their ways of thinking are making them blind. To make it even harder, we don't like to see ourselves or others as having blind spots, even though we all have them. When you point out someone's psychological weaknesses, it's generally about as well received as if you pointed out their physical weaknesses. If you're like most people, you have no clue about how other people see things and aren't good at seeking to understand what they're thinking because you're too preoccupied with telling them what you yourself think is correct. In other words, you're closed-minded. You presume too much. This closed-mindedness is terribly costly. It causes you to miss out on all sorts of wonderful possibilities and dangerous threats that other people might be showing you. And it blocks criticism that could be constructive and even life-saving. The end result of these two barriers is that parties in disagreements typically remain convinced that they're right, and often end up angry at each other. This is illogical and leads to suboptimal decision-making. After all, when two people reach opposite conclusions, someone must be wrong. Shouldn't you want to make sure that that someone isn't you? This failure to benefit from others' thinking doesn't just occur when disagreements arise. It occurs when people encounter problems that they're trying to solve. Trying to figure things out, most people spin in their own heads instead of taking in all the wonderful thinking available to them. As a result, they continually run toward what they see and keep crashing into what they are blind to until the crashing leads them to adapt. Those who adapt do so by A, teaching their brains to work in a way that doesn't come naturally. For example, the creative person learns to become organized through discipline and practice. B, they use compensating mechanisms. For example, programmed reminders. And or C, they learn to rely on the help of others who are strong where they are weak. Differences in thinking can be symbiotic and complementary instead of disruptive. For example, the lateral approach to thinking that is common among creative people can lead them to be unreliable, while more linear thinkers are often more dependable. Some people are more emotional, while others are more logical, and so on. None of these individuals would be able to succeed at any kind of complex project without having the help of others who have complementary strengths. Aristotle defined tragedy as a terrible outcome arising from a person's fatal flaw. A flaw that, had it been fixed, instead would have led to a wonderful outcome. In my opinion, these two barriers, ego and blind spots, are the fatal flaws that keep intelligent, hardworking people from living up to their potentials. Would you like to learn how to get past them? You can do it. Everybody can. Here's how. It seems to me that the personal evolutionary process, in other words, the looping that I described in the last chapter, takes place in 5 distinct steps. First, have clear goals. Second, identify and don't tolerate the problems that stand in the way of you achieving your goals. Third, accurately diagnose the problems to get at their root causes. Fourth, design plans that will get you around those problems. And fifth, do what's necessary to push those designs through to completion. Together, these 5 steps make up a loop. Let's look at this process more granularly. First, you have to pick what you're going after. In other words, your goals. Your choice of goals will determine your direction. As you move toward them, you will encounter problems. Some of those problems will bring you up against your own weaknesses. How you react to the pain that causes is up to you. If you want to reach your goals, you must be calm and analytical so that you can accurately diagnose your problems, design a plan that will get you around them, and do what is necessary to push through to results. Then you will have to look at the new results you achieve and go through the process again. To evolve quickly, you will have to do this fast and continuously, setting your goals successively higher. You will need to do all 5 steps well in order to be successful, and you must do them one at a time and in that order. For example, when setting goals, just set goals. Don't think about how you will achieve them or what you will do if something goes wrong. When you are diagnosing your problems, don't think about how you will solve them, just diagnose them. Blurring the steps leads to suboptimal outcomes because it interferes with uncovering the true problems. Understand that a great manager is essentially an organizational engineer. Great managers are not philosophers, entertainers, doers, or artists. They are engineers. They see their organizations as machines and work assiduously to maintain and improve them. They create process flow diagrams to show how the machine works and to evaluate its design. They build metrics to light up how well each of the individual parts of the machine, most importantly the people, and the machine as a whole are working. And they tinker constantly with its designs and its people to make both better. They don't do this randomly, they do it systematically, always keeping the cause and effect relationships in mind. And while they care deeply about people involved, they cannot allow their feelings for them or their desire to spare them discomfort to stand in the way of the machine's constant improvement. To do otherwise would be good for either the individuals on the team or the team that the individuals are a part of. Of course, the higher up you are in an organization, the more important vision and creativity become, but you still must have the skills required to manage and orchestrate well. Some young entrepreneurs start with the vision and creativity and then develop their management skills as they scale their companies. Others start with management skills and develop vision as they climb the ladder. But like great musicians, all great managers have both creativity and technical skills, and no manager at any level can expect to succeed without the skill set of an organizational engineer. Principle 1.7. Pain plus reflection equals progress. There is no avoiding pain, especially if you're going after ambitious goals. Believe it or not, you are lucky to feel that kind of pain if you approach it correctly, because it is a signal that you need to find solutions so you can progress. If you can develop a reflective reaction to psychic pain that causes you to reflect on it rather than avoid it, it will lead to your rapid learning and evolving. After seeing how much more effective it is to face the painful realities that are caused by your problems, mistakes, and weaknesses, I believe you won't want to operate
Morning,
any
God
other
bless.
way.
Welcome to McDonald's.
It's just a matter of getting in the habit of doing it. Most people have a tough time reflecting when they are in pain, and they pay attention to other things when the pain passes, so they miss out on the reflections that provide the lessons. If you can reflect well while you're in pain, which is probably too much to ask, great. But if you can remember to reflect after it passes, that's valuable too. I created a pain button app to help people do this, which I'll describe in the appendix. The challenges you face will test and strengthen you. If you're not failing, you're not pushing your limits. And if you're not pushing your limits, you're not maximizing your potential. Though this process of pushing your limits, of sometimes failing and sometimes breaking through, and deriving benefits from both your failures and your successes, is not for everyone. If it is for you, it can be so thrilling that it becomes addictive. Life will inevitably bring you such moments, and it will be up to you to decide whether you want to go back for more. If you choose to push through this often painful process of personal evolution, you will naturally ascend to higher and higher levels. As you climb above the blizzard of things that surrounds you, you will realize that they seem bigger than they really are when you are seeing them up close. That most things in life are just another one of those. The higher you ascend, the more effective you become at working with reality to shape outcomes toward your goals. What once seemed impossibly complex becomes simple. Embrace reality and deal with it. There is nothing more important than understanding how reality works and how to deal with it. The state of mind you bring to this process makes all the difference. I found it helpful to think of my life as if it were a game in which each problem I face is a puzzle I need to solve. By solving the puzzle, I get a gem in the form of a principle that helps me avoid the same sort of problem in the future. Collecting these gems continually improves my decision making, so I'm able to ascend to a higher level and higher levels of play in which the game gets harder and the stakes become even greater. All sorts of emotions come to me while I'm playing, and those emotions can either help me or hurt me. If I can reconcile my emotions with my logic and only act when they're aligned, I make better decisions. Learning how reality works, visualizing the things I want to create, and then building them out is incredibly exciting to me. Stretching for big goals puts me in a position of failing and needing to learn and come up with new inventions in order to move forward. I find it exhilarating to be caught up in the feedback of rapid learning, Just as a surfer loves riding a wave, even though it sometimes leads to crashes. Don't get me wrong, I'm still scared of crashes, and I still find them painful. But I keep the pain in perspective, knowing that I will get through these setbacks, and that most of my learning will come from reflecting on them. Just as long distance runners push through the pain to experience the pleasure of runner's high, I have largely gotten past the pain of my mistake making and instead enjoy the pleasure that comes with learning from it. I believe that with practice you can change your habits and experience the same mistake learner's high. Distinguish between you as the designer of your machine and you as a worker within your machine. One of the hardest things for people to do is to objectively look down on themselves within their circumstances, in other words, within their machine, so that they can act as the machine's designer and manager. Most people remain stuck in the perspective of being a worker within their machine. If you can recognize the differences between those roles, and that it is much more important that you are a good designer manager of your life than a good worker in it, you will be on the right path. To be successful, the designer manager you has to be objective about what the worker you is really like, not believing in him more than he deserves, or putting him in jobs that he shouldn't be in. Instead of having this perspective, most people operate emotionally and in the moment. Their lives are a series of undirected emotional experiences, going from one thing to the next. If you want to look back on your life and feel you've achieved what you wanted to, you can't operate that way. D. The biggest mistake most people make is to not see themselves and others objectively, which leads them to bump into their own and others' weaknesses again and again. People who do this fail because they are stubbornly stuck in their own heads. If they could just get around this, they could live up to their potential. This is why higher level thinking is essential for success. E. Successful people are those who can go above themselves to see things objectively and manage those things to shape change. They can take in the perspectives of others instead of being trapped in their own heads with their own biases. They are able to look objectively at what they are like, their strengths and their weaknesses, and what others are like to put the right people in the right roles to achieve their goals. Once you understand how to do this, you'll see that there's virtually nothing you can't accomplish. You will just have to learn how to face your realities and use the full range of resources at your disposal. For example, if you as the designer manager of your life discovers that you as the worker can't do something well, you need to fire yourself as the worker and get a good replacement while staying in the role of the designer manager of your own life. You shouldn't feel upset at yourself if you find out that you're bad at something. You should be happy you found out, because knowing that and dealing with it will improve your chances of getting what you want.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're disappointed because you can't be the best person to do everything for yourself, you're terribly naive. Nobody can do everything well. Would you want to have Einstein on your basketball team? When he fails to dribble and shoot well, would you think badly of him? Should he feel humiliated? Imagine all the areas in which Einstein was incompetent, and imagine how hard he struggled to excel, even in the areas in which he was the best in the world. Watching people struggle and having others watch you struggle can elicit all kinds of ego-driven emotions, such as sympathy, pity, embarrassment, anger, or defensiveness. You need to get over all that and stop seeing struggling as something negative. Most of life's greatest opportunities come out of moments of struggle. It's up to you to make the most of these tests of your creativity and character. Asking others who are strong in areas where you are weak to help you is a great skill that you should develop no matter what. and it will help you develop guardrails that will prevent you from doing what you shouldn't be doing. All successful people are good at this. G. Because it is difficult to see oneself objectively, you need to rely on the input of others and the whole body of evidence. I know that my own life has been full of mistakes and lots of great feedback. It was only by looking down on this body of evidence from a higher level that I was able to get around my mistakes and go after what I wanted. For as long as I've been practicing this, I still know I can't see myself objectively, which is why I continue to rely as much on others' input. H. If you are open-minded enough and determined, you can get virtually anything you want. So I don't want to dissuade you from going after what you want. At the same time, I urge you to reflect on whether what you are going after is consistent with your nature. Whatever your nature is, there are many paths that will suit you, so don't fixate on just one. Should a particular path close, all you have to do is find another one consistent with what you're like. You'll learn a lot about how to determine what you're like in the chapter Understand That People Are Wired Differently, which comes later. But most people lack the courage to confront their own weaknesses and make the hard choices that this process requires. Ultimately, it comes down to these 5 decisions. First, don't confuse what you wish were true with what is really true. Second, don't worry about looking good. Worry instead about achieving your goals. Third, don't overweight first-order consequences relative to second and third-order ones. Fourth, don't let pain stand in the way of your progress. And fifth, don't blame bad outcomes on anyone but yourself. Chapter 4. Get and stay in sync. Remember that for an organization to be effective, the people who make it up must be aligned on many levels, from what their shared mission is to how they will treat each other, to a more practical picture of who will do what when to achieve their goals. Yet alignment can never be taken for granted because people are wired so differently. We all see ourselves and the world in our own unique ways, so deciding what's true and what to do about it takes constant work. Alignment is especially important in an idea meritocracy, so at Bridgewater we try to attain alignment consciously, continually, and systematically. We call this process of finding alignment getting in sync, and there are 2 primary ways it can go wrong. Cases resulting from simple misunderstandings and those stemming from fundamental disagreements. Getting in sync is the process of open-mindedly and assertively reflecting on both types. Many people mistakenly believe that papering over differences is the easiest way to keep the peace. They couldn't be more wrong. By avoiding conflicts, one avoids resolving differences. People who suppress minor conflicts tend to have much bigger conflicts later on, which can lead to separation, while people who address their mini conflicts head on tend to have the best and longest lasting relationships. Thoughtful disagreement, the process of having a quality back and forth in an open-minded and assertive way so as to see things through each other's eyes, is powerful because it helps both parties see things they've been blind to. But it's not easy. While it is straightforward to have a meritocracy in activities in which there is a clarity of relative abilities, because the results speak for themselves, such as in sports where the fastest runner wins the race, it is much harder in a creative environment where different points of view about what's best have to be resolved. If they're not, the process of sorting through disagreements and knowing who has the authority to decide quickly becomes chaotic. Sometimes people get angry or stuck. A conversation can easily wind up with 2 or more people spinning unproductively and unable to reach agreement on what to do. For these reasons, specific processes and procedures must be followed. Every party to the discussion must understand who has what right, which procedures should be followed to move toward resolution. We've also developed tools for helping do this, which you will hear later in the appendix. And everyone must understand the most fundamental principle for getting in sync, which is that people must be open-minded and assertive at the same time. Thoughtful disagreement is not a battle. Its goal is not to convince the other party that he or she is wrong and that you are right, but to find out what is true and what to do about it. It must also be non-hierarchical, because in an idea meritocracy, communication doesn't just flow unquestioned from the top down. Criticisms must also come from the bottom up. For example, this email was sent to me by someone who worked for me after a meeting with clients. All the senior people at Bridgewater, including me, are routinely criticized and judged by our subordinates. From Jim H. to Ray, Lionel K., Greg J., Randall S., David A. Subject: feedback on ABC meeting. Ray, you deserve a D- for your performance today in the ABC meeting, and everyone that was in the room that saw you agrees on that harsh assessment, give or take half a grade. This was especially disappointing for two reasons. One, you have been great in previous meetings where the subject matter to be covered was the same. And two, we held a specific planning meeting yesterday to ask you to focus tightly on culture and portfolio structuring because we had only 2 hours to have you cover those two topics. Me cover the investment process, have Greg do the observatory, and have Randall do implementation. Instead, you took a total of 62 minutes, I measured, but worse, you rambled for 50 minutes on what I think was portfolio structuring topics, and only then got to culture, and you talked about that for 12 minutes. It was obvious to all of us that you did not prepare at all, because there is no way you could have been that disorganized at the outset if you had prepared. Principle 3.4. Remember to reflect when you experience pain. Remember this, the pain is all in your head. If you want to evolve, you need to go where the problems and the pain are. By confronting the pain, you will see more clearly the paradoxes and problems you face. Reflecting on them and resolving them will give you wisdom. The harder the pain and the challenge, the better. Because these moments of pain are so important, you shouldn't rush through them. Stay in them and explore them so you can build a foundation for improvement. Embracing your failures and confronting the pain they cause you and others is the first step toward genuine improvement. It is why confession precedes forgiveness in many societies. Psychologists call this hitting bottom. If you keep doing this, you will convert the pain of facing your mistakes and weaknesses into pleasures and get to the other side, as I explained in Embrace Reality and Deal with It. A. Be self-reflective and make sure your people are self-reflective. When there is pain, the animal instinct is fight or flight. Calm yourself down and reflect instead. The pain you are feeling is due to things being in conflict. Maybe you've come up against a terrible reality, such as the death of a friend, and are unable to accept it. Maybe you've been forced to acknowledge a weakness that challenges the idea you had of yourself. If you can think clearly about what's behind it, you will learn more about what reality is like and how to better deal with it. Self-reflectiveness is the quality that most differentiates those who evolve quickly from those who don't. Remember, pain plus reflection equals progress. For any group or organization to function well, its work principles must be aligned with its members' life principles. I don't mean that they have to be aligned on everything, but I do mean that they have to be aligned on the most important things, like the mission they're on and how they will be with each other. If people in an organization feel that alignment, they will treasure their relationships and work together harmoniously. Its culture will permeate everything they do. If they don't, they will work for different, often conflicting goals, and will be confused about how they should be with each other. For that reason, It pays for all organizations, companies, governments, foundations, schools, hospitals, and so on, to spell out their principles and values clearly and explicitly, and to operate by them consistently. Those principles and values aren't vague slogans like the customer always comes first or we should strive to be the best in our industry, but a set of concrete directives that anyone can understand, get aligned on, and carry out. As we shift our attention from life principles to work principles, I will explain how we went about achieving these alignments at Bridgewater and how that affected our results. But first, I want to explain how I think about organizations. An organization is a machine consisting of two major parts: culture and people. Each influences the other because the people who make up an organization determine the kind of culture it has, and the culture of the organization determines the kinds of people who fit in. Trust in radical truth and radical transparency. Understanding what is true is essential for success, and being radically transparent about everything, including mistakes and weaknesses, helps create the understanding that leads to improvements. That's not just a theory. We have put this into practice at Bridgewater for over 40 years, so we know how it works. But like most things in life, being radically truthful and transparent has cons as well as pros, which I will describe as accurately as possible in this chapter. Being radically truthful and transparent with your colleagues and expecting your colleagues to be the same with you ensures that important issues are apparent instead of hidden. It also enforces good behavior and good thinking, because when you have to explain yourself, everyone can openly assess the merits of your logic. If you're handling things well, radical transparency will make that clear. And if you're handling things badly, radical transparency will make that clear as well. So it helps to maintain high standards. Radical truth and radical transparency are fundamental to having a real idea meritocracy. The more people can see what is happening, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the more effective they are at deciding the appropriate ways of handling things. This approach is also invaluable for training. Learning is compounded and accelerated when everyone has the opportunity to hear what everyone else is thinking. As a leader, you will get the feedback essential for your learning and for the continual improvement of the organization's decision-making. And seeing firsthand what's happening and why builds trust and allows people to make the independent assessments of the evidence that a functioning idea meritocracy requires. Chapter 8. Looking back from a higher level. As I look back on my experiences, it's interesting to reflect on how my perspectives have changed. When I started out, each and every twist and turn I encountered, whether in the markets or in my life in general, looked really big and dramatic up close, like unique life or death experiences that were coming at me fast. With time and experience, I came to see each encounter as another one of those that I could approach more calmly and analytically, like a biologist might approach an encounter with a threatening creature in the jungle. First, by identifying its species, and then drawing on his prior knowledge about its expected behaviors and reacting appropriately. When I was faced with the types of situations I had encountered before, I drew on the principles I had learned for dealing with them. But when I ran into new ones I hadn't seen before, I would be painfully surprised. By studying all those painful first-time encounters, I learned that even if they hadn't happened to me, most of them had happened to other people in other times and places, which gave me a healthy respect for history, a hunger to have a universal understanding of how reality works, and the desire to build timeless and universal principles for dealing with it. Watching the same things happen again and again, I began to see reality as a gorgeous perpetual motion machine, in which causes become effects that become causes of new effects, and so on. I realized that reality was, if not perfect, at least what we are given to deal with, so that any problems or frustrations I had with it were more productively directed to dealing with them effectively than complaining about them. I came to understand that my encounters were tests of my character and creativity. Over time, I came to appreciate what a tiny and short-lived part of that remarkable system I am, and how it's both good for me and good for the system for me to know how to interact with it well. In gaining this perspective, I began to experience painful moments in a radically different way. Instead of feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, I saw pain as nature's reminder that there is something important for me to learn. Encountering pains and figuring out the lessons they were trying to give me became sort of a game for me. The more I played it, the better I got at it, the less painful those situations became, and the more rewarding the process of reflecting, developing principles, and then getting rewards for using those principles became. I learned to love my struggles, which I suppose is a healthy perspective to have, like learning to love exercising, which, by the way, I haven't managed yet to do. In my early years, I looked up to extraordinarily successful people, thinking that they were successful because they were extraordinary. After I got to know such people personally, I realized that all of them, like me, like everyone, make mistakes, struggle with their weaknesses, and don't feel that they are particularly special or great. They are no happier than the rest of us, and they struggle just as much or more than average folks. Even after they surpass their wildest dreams, they still experience more struggle than glory. This has certainly been true for me. While I surpassed my wildest dreams decades ago, I'm still struggling today. In time, I realized that the satisfaction of success doesn't come from achieving your goals, but from struggling well. To understand what I mean, imagine your greatest goal, whatever it is: making a ton of money, winning an Academy Award, running a great organization, being great at a sport. Now imagine instantaneously achieving it. You'd be happy at first, but not for long. You would soon find yourself needing something else to struggle for. Just look at people who attain their dreams early: the early childhood star, the lottery winner, the professional athlete who peaks early. They typically don't end up happy unless they get excited about something else bigger and better to struggle for. Since life brings us both ups and downs, struggling well doesn't just make your ups better, it makes your downs less bad. I'm still struggling, and I will until I die, because even if I try to avoid the struggles, they will find me. Thanks to all that struggling and learning, I have done everything I wanted to do, gone everywhere I wanted to go, met whomever I wanted to meet, gotten everything I wanted to own, and had a career that has been enthralling and, most rewardingly, had many wonderful relationships. I have experienced the full range from having nothing to having an enormous amount, from being a nobody to being a somebody, so I know the differences. While I experience them going from the bottom up rather than the top down, which is preferable and probably influenced my perspective, my assessment is that the incremental benefits of having a lot and being on top are not nearly as great as most people think. Having the basics, a good bed to sleep in, good relationships, good food, and good sex is most important. And those things don't get much better when you have a lot of money, or much worse when you have less. And the people one meets at the top aren't necessarily more special than those that one meets at the bottom or in between. The marginal benefits of having more fall off pretty quickly. In fact, having a lot more is worse than having a moderate amount more, because it comes with heavy burdens. Being on top gives you a wider range of options, but it also requires more of you. Being well known is probably worse than being anonymous, all things considered. And while the beneficial impact one can have on others is great, when you put it in perspective, it's still infinitesimally small. For those reasons, I can't say that having an intense life filled with accomplishments is better than having a relaxed life filled with savoring. Though I can say being strong is better than being weak, and that struggling gives one strength. My nature being what it is, I would not have changed my life, but I can't tell you what's best for you. That is for you to choose. What I've seen is that the happiest people discover their own nature and match their life to it. Now that my desire to succeed has given way to a desire to help others succeed, that's my current struggle. It's now clear to me that my purpose, your purpose, and the purpose of everything is to evolve and contribute to evolution in some small way. I didn't think about that at the start. I just went after the things I wanted. But along the way I evolved, and I am now sharing these principles with you to help you evolve. I realized that passing on knowledge is like passing on DNA. It is more important than the individual because it lives beyond the individual's life. This is my attempt to help you succeed by passing along to you what I learned about how to struggle well, or at the very least, to help you get the most out of each unit of effort you put in.
Welcome to CSIS Online. The way we bring you events is changing, but we'll still present live analysis and award-winning digital media from our Draconis Ideas Lab, all on your time, live or on demand. This is CSIS Online.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Hamry. I'm the president of CSIS in Washington, D.C., and delighted to have you. This is going to be a remarkable opportunity for me, and I think for all of us, to listen to two really unique strategic thinkers. This is a first for CSIS. We've never before had the opportunity to put a strategic thinker who lives in the world of finance and a strategic thinker who lives in the world of geopolitics together to talk about some of the really great transcending issues of our day. We're doing this based on a book that Ray Dalio has just published. It's called The Changing World Order. Principles for dealing with the changing world order, why nations succeed and fail. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. And so, let me just start. Because Ray is the author, I want to start with him. Ray, why did you write this book?
In order to understand what's happening now, and from my perspective, to do my job well, I needed to understand certain things that never happened in my lifetime. I learned a while ago that most of the surprises in my lifetime came from things that never happened in my lifetime that happened many times before. In this case, there were three big things that were happening simultaneously: the creation
We're gonna
of
go
a lot
check on
of
our
debt
churches
and
and
the
charities.
printing
Run
of
to the
money
office, help the
to
family.
pay for that debt.
Content
So
creation.
there's a financial component to
Of
that.
course, I have meetings
Spending a lot
non-stop,
more money
but
than
we're
you're
gonna
earning,
continue
financing
with
it
our
with debt and
engineering
printing
class.
money.
So we'll
The
see you in a bit.
second is
All right, peace out. Dreams
the
come true,
amount of
baby.
internal
Let's do
conflict
this. You gotta
arising from
represent.
the
Gotta
largest
represent.
wealth
That's
gaps
my uncle Sal.
and the largest political gaps since